If you've been staring at air compressors for more than 10 minutes, you already know the sinking feeling. Every spec looks good on paper, but the second you try to picture it in your garage or workshop, doubts creep in. Is it going to be too loud? Will it actually keep up with the tools you run most days? And once it's set up, how much of your weekend is going to disappear into maintenance? I spent the last couple of weeks digging into the Ingersoll Rand 2475N7.5 7.5 HP two-stage compressor to see whether it solves those real-life headaches or just adds new ones. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. What sold me on looking at this machine in the first place is that it's built for people who don't want to babysit their compressor. The two-stage design means it cools the air twice before it reaches your tools, so you're not constantly chasing pressure drops when you're running a framing nailer or a 6-inch belt sander for more than a few minutes. If you're still running a single-stage unit and wondering why your tools sputter after the first board, that temperature drop is the difference between works fine and actually usable. The 7.5 HP motor pushes 24.7 CFM at 90 psi, which is enough headroom that you can run 2 moderate tools at once without watching the tank pressure dive. That's the kind of headroom that keeps you from having to pause every few minutes to let the compressor catch up. Where this compressor earns its keep is in daily use, not just the first weekend. The cast iron pump is splash lubricated and designed for long service intervals, so you're not draining oil every couple of weeks like you would on cheaper single-stage units. That's the hidden time saver: fewer oil changes, fewer filter swaps, and fewer surprise trips to the hardware store for parts that were out too soon. If you've ever had a compressor die because a cheap valve plate cracked after 6 months, the fact that Ingersoll Rand still sells rebuild kits for this model 20 years later tells you something about the longevity they baked in. The downside is that two-stage compressors are heavier. This one weighs 375 pounds, so rolling it around on a dime isn't happening. If your shop is already tight on space or you need to move the compressor from job site to job site every week, you'll want to measure doorways and ramps before pulling the trigger. Noise is the other elephant in the room. At full load, this thing will run around 78 dB, which is basically a loud vacuum cleaner in the next room. If your shop is attached to the house or you're trying to run it during off hours, that's something to think about. The good news is that because it's a two-stage unit, it cycles less often than a single stage of the same CFM, so the total noise exposure over a day is lower even if the peak is higher. Still, if you're used to the hush of an oil-free pancake compressor, the sound signature will take some getting used to. The real deciding factor is whether you actually need 24 CFM at 90 psi on a regular basis. If you're mostly running an impact wrench, a brad nailer, or an HVLP spray gun for short bursts, a smaller single-stage compressor will do the job and save you a ton of floor space and money. But if you're running a 6-inch sander for hours, running 2 tools at once, or you're tired of replacing cheap compressors every couple of years, the Ingersoll Rand starts to look like a smarter long-term play. The 2-year warranty is nice, but the real value is in the rebuildability and the fact that you won't be shopping for a replacement compressor in 3 years. One last thing. The electrical side matters more than most buyers realize. This compressor draws about 28 amps at 240 volts, so you'll need a dedicated 30 amp circuit and a heavy-duty plug. If your shop wiring is already maxed out, budget for an electrician visit before you wheel this thing inside. Skimping on the wiring is the fastest way to turn a $2,000 compressor into a paperweight. If you're on the fence, ask yourself how often you're currently stopping work to let your compressor recover. If the answer is more than I'd like, this machine is worth the investment. If you're only using tools for a few minutes at a time, there are cheaper ways to get the job done. Either way, check the link in the description if you want to see the current price and specs before you decide.